Welcome to Moral Side of the News. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children. With me, as always, is a distinguished panel. Rabbi Emerita Gaylia Rooks, the Temple. Reverend Harriett Akins-Banman, Centenary United Methodist Church in New Albany. Reverend Daniel Corrie Shull, Burnett Avenue Baptist Church. And Father Tony Smith, Archdiocese of Louisville. Our first topic, voter turnout for Kentucky's primary was predictably light, and it determined the race for governor. Democrat incumbent Andy Beshear will square off with Republican Daniel Cameron. Panel, were you surprised by the vote, and what do you expect down the line? Tony, looks like you're up.
I'll start. As you mentioned, was it between 10 and 14% turnout or something of this nature? Now, of course, I'm not a Democrat nor am I a Republican. I'm one of those weird independent people. My bishop keeps telling me that anyway. But no, as far as the Democrats, there was no contest, and as some people said, no contest for Attorney General Cameron either. But there were like 14 different positions opening up, I believe, under contention for the Republican side, and to only have 10 to 14% come out. I mean, that's. It says to me that somebody needs to do a lot of work between now and the actual general election. My only other comment would be that looking at all the, what do you want to call them, voting commercials, whatever, and the candidates put out their little flyers and all that good stuff. I would say if you take those, each one of those, all of those put together, there's not a single candidate running that any of us should vote for. You know, they're all negative, most of them, except for, was it Mr. Quayle? I think he had some positive comments, but other than that, it was totally negative. And as someone said, that does turn you off when you see a lot of the negativity out there. But my comment is that it just shows the tenor of the nation at this time, not just our state, but the tenor of the nation. I did hear today, by the way, that the governor's race in Kentucky is going to be one of the top races in the nation people are looking at to see what happens. Which, we'll see what happens on that. But that would be an introductory comment type thing. I don't think we saw anything unexpected.
Oh, living on the sunny side of the river, it was interesting to watch and to listen to. And it makes me wonder if it's not a microcosm of what's going to happen nationally as we go into the presidential elections and all the other elections that will lead up to that time. And I wonder and I read in New York Times about low voter turnout anticipated, and and the remarks from around the country all echo one another. People are discouraged and they're tired of politics as it is, and they're just weary.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but I don't think that's really what's happening in Kentucky, and I think that people are overgeneralizing that. I think that obviously Governor Beshear was going to be the Democratic choice, and obviously Attorney General Cameron was going to be the Republican choice. I'm not saying that means you shouldn't bother to go out and vote. I just don't think that the fact that maybe people didn't bother to go out as much as we certainly would want and expect from exercising our right to vote, our privilege, our right, and I think people, especially people outside of Kentucky, are reading more into this. Maybe that's just because I always see the glass half full rather than half empty. But I do not believe that this means we'll see a low voter turnout for the actual elections. I don't think that there was that much going on in this primary that was moving people to feel like, my voice matters.
I think you could miss this primary if you were not looking for it, and particularly if you were not a Republican. So I saw the ads. None of the ads appealed to me. I think that Kelly Craft is a very, very dangerous person. And so I really found her ads laughable when I would catch them on television in the mornings, generally, when I was watching the morning news. I wonder how many people are even watching the morning news to catch those ads. And that would have been the only indication that I would have had that a primary was coming. And I actually serve at a church that was hosting, that was a precinct for voting. So I don't know that it was a primary that would have engendered that type of interest. I too, Rabbi Rooks, woke up to a lot of text messages from people saying, "What in the world is going on in Kentucky? Daniel Cameron won." But we know Daniel Cameron is not the best representation of an attorney general or a political professional. But I will say I was relieved to see that he won. I was relieved because I thought again that Kelly Craft would be just a I only have one word for it. I don't think I can say it on air. But
frightening.
I mean that would have been really bad. And I think that I hope that it'll be relatively easy for Andy Bashir to beat Daniel Cameron, because Daniel Cameron has shown himself just not to be a person of due diligence as it relates to discharging his duties. And we have a whole DOJ report that sort of underscores his negligence. So surely any thoughtful person wouldn't vote for him. So, And
Andy Bashir is one of the most popular governors in the entire country. I mean, he did a great job, in my opinion, leading us through COVID. Does that mean it couldn't have been better? No, I'm not saying that. But I think with what he had to deal with, that he did really an excellent job. And I think we should all be grateful to him and lucky if he's willing to serve another term.
Yeah, I saw some stats today. I think his approval rating was in the 60 percentile, somewhere up there. And I think that was just general. I don't think that was just among Democrats. So
he's done a good job.
Yeah, I think so too.
And when you look at the economic sort of progress that we've made as a state, he's done a great job. I think it's sad the partisan politics and how polarized things have become. Because I think in any other era, he would be roundly applauded for the job that he has done, from Democrats and Republicans.
One of the left field on the whole issue of the election again, Gaylia, you mentioned about the liberties we have, whatever, but also I think at least they used to, back when I was a kid with hair on my head, they taught us something called civics in school. Do they do that anymore? I don't know. But I was taught that voting was not just it's a responsibility. It's not just a liberty and a right. It's a responsibility for a democracy, a representative democracy, whatever. So I would put that in the mix as well. That I think anytime yes, it's a sure thing. So why should I go vote? You should go vote because I'm kind of a little put back in a sense. My dad always said I was one of the dumbest child he had, because I would not sign up into one of the Republican or Democrat. I was always an independent. He said, "You'll never get to vote then." But if we had if it was an open primary for those, whether you're Republican or Democrat or independent, I would have certainly voted, because I cannot vote today, or yesterday rather. But I think in my point of view, it's if we used to say maybe it's a reflection of the general election coming up. If it's that case, then I think we need some more little civic training in our society. So if you want to keep a democracy, then vote.
And not
don't you think it also
wants to keep a democracy? I'm sorry, Harriet, that one sentence. I don't think everyone in this country anymore wants to keep a democracy, and that keeps me up at night.
That's why we need more civics training. But anyway, I'm sorry, Ms. Harriet, Reverend Harriet.
Well, to go back to what you were saying with all the ads, if it's just spewing, if it's just mudslinging on both sides, then how is that going to endear and engender us to want to vote and to really know the facts? I want to hear what's the platform and what's the resume and where are their ethics and where is their integrity. I can read about the opponent, but tell me what you're going to do so that I can
exactly.
you.
I don't think they have much of a platform. I think that the slander is the platform. And for many of these people, particularly in this primary, they were taking their cues from Trumpism. That is what guides their ethics and their political imagination. And so, for instance, with Kelly Craft, she kept promoting that she was going to do things that she would not have the constitutional authority to do.
Exactly.
And so, it didn't take a lot of research for a voter to see this lady is, she is either delusional or she is just peddling lies.
No.
Beyond that, she started talking about, taking away jobs from Kentucky. I don't think we ought to be messing with GE's jobs. Yes, they may be Chinese owned, but we may not want to tamper with those jobs because that impacts Kentuckians. And so she made some of those mistakes that I just did not think it was wise at all. And I think she was arrogant enough to believe that her wealth would be able to buy the election for her. And so I'm glad that Kentuckians kind of push back on that notion.
That question of honesty as well. I saw a little bit of that, Corrie, in regards to Attorney General Cameron, when he said, I did this, I sued, all the different things he sued for. Just because you bring a lawsuit doesn't mean you win the suits, number one. Number two, it doesn't mean that you have the constitutional right to do so, because a number of those were turned out of court. So that's exactly. Honesty on all sides was questionable in my mind. I'm sorry, Reverend Harriett, again, I interrupted.
Well, it's the money poured out for ads just sickens me. I think it should be a buy one, get one. If you do an ad that costs $1 bazillion, then you give that same amount to do some good in your community. And you can choose that good, but it's got to show up. And I, as a potential voter, even though I'm on the other side of the river, would want to see the receipt for that, Give some food to the food pantries, because Lord knows we've got neighbors and friends in need. That just sends me up the wall.
I always say that if we took all the money on political advertisements, whether national, whatever, we could pay off our national debt. There wouldn't be a financial issue.
Wouldn't be in this situation that we're in now, which is
right.
But I remember back in the Bud Harbsmeyer days talking about campaign finance reform and, and that was before I think the term dark money had even been invented. Maybe you still had hair on your head, Tony.
Either on my chin or my head, one of the two.
All right, panel, we're off to a good start on this edition of Moral Side of the News. Thanks for joining us and listening and watching to this program. Our second topic, cybersecurity, is in the news this week after the Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper and locally, Norton Healthcare, fell victim to cyber events. Several computer systems were knocked offline. In the case of the Inquirer, it happened on the eve of their primary election day in Pennsylvania. Panelists, how safe do you feel about cybersecurity?
Go ahead, Gaylia.
I'm just
Harriet, you said you had a story, I think.
Pretty much says it all. I mean, we try to be as secure as we can. Certainly, the great hospitals try. They in theory, we should never give in to terrorists. I mean, we should never give in to terrorists, period. On the other hand, especially like hospitals, I mean, they need their systems up and running. It's not just billing issues. I mean, it's medical records and anyway, I understand why they think that paying the ransom is the right answer, because that's what they need to do. But then that just, encourages more because it works. I don't think that I think that our dependence on the cloud and cybersecurity goes far beyond our morals and ethical growth as a country, as a world. But I'm not seeing any alternative to it.
Well, a lot of it's not just the big institutions like the hospitals and whatever. The military faces the same thing. It's just coming to the fore now that a lot of churches throughout the country are being hacked. Same way, and the old statement, I think, is true: he who controls the information or the information technology controls the world. But again, I left field on you here a little bit. I don't think the hacking is going to be the major issue. One of the issues coming to the fore, as we've seen even in D.C. at the present time, is artificial intelligence. Once that becomes involved in the computerization of hacking, whatever, think of what an artificial intelligent, what do they call those things, chat box or whatever, could do as far as locking the government system down or whatever, or locking not just one hospital, but all medical fields. So, this is going to, like you say, it's beyond, in a sense, it's beyond the moral, yes, but it really is a frightening aspect. Not that we're going to have robots walking around like they do in the Terminator or whatever it is, but it's going to impact us. And I think, as one of the fellows testified in Congress the other day, it's going to change human history. So
Well, it already has. When you look at cyber involvement in our elections and
right.
disinformation being spread, and I mean, we have evidence of that. I don't know that we know how to prevent it in the future. And if we put a roadblock to that one, then they'll come around that and come up with a new one, and then we'll come up with another. But I mean, this is sort of a reality of the world in which we live, and it worries me.
I used to be very up on technology, having one of the first computers in the diocese, all that good stuff back when. Remember something called Radio Shack way back when? But now we're doing on this Zoom now with a laptop, and I have a desk model tower behind me, and all this Windows 11, Windows whatever they've got nowadays. I turn the computer on. I have to sit there and think for a few moments as to which key to push, rather than be up on all this stuff. So it behooves us to, yes, have the training and at least have someone who's facing the reality of our security needs out there besides just military, whatever. But
I'd like to go back to the Norton story in that it hit my household, yes. Because my husband is a nuclear medicine technologist in the Norton system, and he's presently working in a heart lab, and so people are coming in for diagnostics that are needed for procedures that for some are life, needed for life and for better life. And so he comes home at night stressed about this backlog and what that means, because doctors can't read the scans. And that means that patients that are waiting for an operating date or a procedure date are being held in that same loop. And so it is this, there is a human element that is part of this that we can't forget about. Yes, they're holding us ransom, and should we ever pay ransom? Are we giving in? And does that mean we're setting a precedent for others to do this bad thing? Probably. But what about those human lives that are on the other side of that story?
Absolutely.
And that are in need? And that is frightening and upsetting. And so this picture is so much bigger than just a computer system getting my name and address and my blood pressure rate. It's so much bigger.
I would think, I haven't thought this through, but I would imagine off the top of my head that every kind of cyber attack has a human connection to it. I mean, whether it's some huge corporation or some small church or whatever, it impacts real people and could be, financially disastrous to some person or people, and certainly could be medically. We're not talking about hacking into the high school computer and changing your C to a B- or a B+. Well,
right.
It's not a victimless crime is what I think I'm trying to say here. And I appreciate your point, Harriet, that it really does impact people and their lives or their livelihoods, their ability to, feed and clothe and shelter their families and themselves.
Absolutely. Okay, panel, thank you for your thoughts on that. Let's talk about a third topic close to your line of work, religious freedom. It's something we take for granted, but the U.S. State Department warns that governments in many parts of the world are using torture, beating, surveillance, and re-education to oppress religious freedom. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken names China and Iran as the worst abusers. We have about 10 minutes left, panel. How do you respond to this news?
I don't think it's any different than our history. There has always been abuse and oppression for religious belief, wherever that was, and for who was proclaiming that belief in those teachings. And I'm glad that it's out that this is happening and this is occurring, so that those of us who enjoy these religious beliefs can step up and be a voice and an advocate in a way that fosters change, or at least helps some conversation happen that needs to happen.
But it's not just governments that do this. Religious institutions themselves do it. Look at our history again, Harriet. Christian versus Christian, Jewish versus Muslim, Shiite versus Sunni. Any major religious organization has its heterodoxy and orthodoxy and all that good stuff. And sometimes, that's just boom, boom, boom. And we look at during the Reformation, look at all the things in Ireland, Christian. So we do need the religious freedom. As someone once said, there is no such thing as religious freedom in the world right now. It's a desire and an idea we have. We have certain liberties. But when you have one religious group going against another religious group, and they all say they worship the same God, problems. So,
well, I think a big answer to that is, I am, well, especially from a Jewish perspective, we don't, proselytize and go out and seek converts, but anyone who comes and wants to become Jewish is always welcome with open arms. But we don't say, we have the only way and you have to believe the way we believe. If we could just have enough respect. I used to hate the word tolerance. 20 years ago, I would never let anyone say the word, I don't want to be tolerated, for being Jewish. I want to be respected. 20 years later, even just 5 years later, the last 5 years, I think I might be ready to settle for tolerance. But if we could just, to me, that's what makes America great. It's one of the top 3 things that really makes our country a shining example of what the world could be. Not that we're the best at necessarily anything, but especially as large as we are. And freedom of religion and freedom from religion are constitutional rights that I feel have been eroded in the last 8 years, more than my entire life. It's very frightening to me that wall between religion and politics. And I would put women's rights and abortion rights and the rise of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and all kinds of things, even right here in our own country where it's supposed to be protected. Right. At more of a risk than it's ever been. Is it like Iran or China? Absolutely not. I don't know how much people know about what's going on in Iran, but even girls, like kids, are being executed or murdered for not properly wearing a hijab or, and what's going on in just many countries. I just don't want to leave. I just don't think that America can brag as much as we perhaps used to be able to on religious freedom.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that our tolerance has declined. I think our willingness to reach across beliefs and ideologies and sacred communities has greatly diminished. And I think that is something that we should all lament and we should strive very hard to pick up. There have been moments in our history where, for instance, the Jewish community and the Black religious community have built bridges in order to understand one another and cooperate with each other. There have been instances where Catholics and Protestants have worked diligently in order to build some understanding and some cooperation within communities, and even nationally, even globally, there have been efforts to do this. We Protestants, we know that Martin Luther was really ahead of his time when he tacked those 95 Theses on the doors of Wittenberg. He was probably the first person that went live from a social media perspective and started a whole Protestant Reformation. But I'm not seeing as much of that type of cooperation and that type of seeking to understand in our world today. And I think that religious communities really should be on the front lines and on the vanguard of creating those opportunities for our nation to be better.
Right.
And Louisville does a pretty good job of that. When you compare us to other cities in the United States, our interfaith community is rich and historic and compassionate, and I wish our racial relations were doing half as well as our interfaith relations.
I agree.
Okay, panel, we've got about 3 minutes left in our program Moral Side of the News this week. Let's hit on a good topic. In just 2 weeks, we'll celebrate the 70th annual WHAS Crusade for Children, June 3rd and 4th. The crusade raises money to fund more than 200 agencies, schools, and hospitals to make life better for children with special needs. Panel, all of you are on the advisory council. Let's hear your thoughts on 70 years helping children.
Well, I haven't really been doing it for 70 years, but I don't know, maybe 25.
Okay.
One of the things that I appreciate the most about Crusade for Children, and there are many things, I probably say a different one every time, but one of the things that comes to my mind now is what a wonderful interfaith, interracial, intercultural, multicultural experience this is. We all give money. We all put money in the boots or show up, mail in our checks or whatever we're doing. And thank you so much for doing that. And it goes out to everyone, to the most needy among us. And the most vulnerable children. As the mother of a special needs child, I know what early intervention does and how much of a difference it makes.
When I started out with this work 70 years ago, because we know I was all here 70 years ago, we didn't know that it would make it this far. No, the Crusade for Children is such a wonderful, wonderful help to so many people. And it's something that our entire community, our entire state should get behind to invest in, because there are so many lives that are impacted and made better because of this work. And so when you see those individuals out there asking for donations, please don't walk by, please don't ride by, but contribute. It really does impact lives in a positive way.
And of course, you mean the state of Kentuckiana, because we go all up to Indianapolis.
Kentuckiana.
It never ceases to surprise me how it started out with two moms, right? Is that part of the story, that had special needs children and knew that there was this need? And then we get to read all these great grants of hard work and creative work people do every single day in Kentuckiana to help these children. And we get to be part of that. It's a win. Dump your change in the boot.
Tony Smith, I'll give you the last 30 seconds.
My comment, amen to everything's been said. Get out there, and it comes, what you give goes to the kids and it comes back to your communities. So be very generous this year round, please.
Absolutely.
How's that?
Remember the Crusade for Children in just 2 weeks on June 3rd and 4th. Thanks to our panel for this edition of Moral Side of the News. Gaylia, Rooks, Harriett, Akins-Banman, Daniel, Corrie, Shull, and Father Tony Smith. We'll be back with an all-new program next week. Thank you, panel. The 70th annual WHAS Crusade for Children is coming up June 3rd and 4th. And there's something new and special. For just $70, make a contribution, and you get a raffle ticket to a kitchen full of GE appliances: microwave, refrigerator, stove, and dishwasher. Second place, a washer dryer. Third place, an ice maker. $70 per ticket. Only 1,000 tickets will be sold. Find out more at WHAScrusade.org. That's WHAScrusade.org. And join us again next week with an all-new conversation here on Moral Side of the News.